The Aztec Empire, known for its grandeur and power, was also infamous for the ruthlessness of its warriors. At the heart of their dominance lay a military culture that embraced tactics so terrifying they still provoke chills centuries later. Here are 7 of the most fearsome tactics used by the Aztecs in their unyielding campaigns for conquest and control. 1. The Flower Wars, a war of sacrifice rather than conquest. While many cultures waged war for territory, resources, or political gain, the Aztecs often fought for a very different purpose. The Flower Wars, or Xochitl, were not about claiming new lands, but about capturing enemies alive for ritual sacrifice. During these staged battles, Aztec warriors would engage with opponents from neighboring cities, intentionally holding back from killing them on the battlefield. Instead, their aim was to wound and incapacitate the enemy so they could be taken back to Tenochtitlan for sacrifice. The Flower Wars served dual purposes. It maintained a steady supply of captives for ritual sacrifice to appease the gods, and it acted as a form of psychological warfare, as neighboring tribes knew that falling into Aztec hands meant a horrifying fate. 2. Psychological warfare, intimidation through appearance and sound. Aztec warriors didn't just rely on physical strength. They knew how to instill fear in the hearts of their enemies long before battle began. Dressed in elaborate costumes, their ranks were filled with warriors in the likeness of fierce animals, jaguars, eagles, and serpents. Their war costumes were not just for protection, they were meant to terrify. During battle, the Aztecs would blow conch shell trumpets and make eerie sounds with death whistles, instruments that emitted a piercing shriek similar to a human scream. These sounds echoed across the battlefield, designed to unsettle and intimidate enemy fighters, putting them in a state of fear even before the clash of arms began. 3. The use of obsidian weapons, brutal and efficient tools of destruction. Aztec warriors wielded some of the most effective and horrifying weapons of their time. The Macuahutl, a wooden sword embedded with razor-sharp obsidian blades, was a favorite. Obsidian, a volcanic glass, could be sharpened to a finer edge than steel, and it was known to slice through flesh and bone with ease. When swung with force, it was capable of decapitating enemies in a single blow, or severely maiming them for capture. Aztecs also used obsidian-tipped spears and arrows, weapons designed for maximum damage. The goal was not only to kill but to wound in a way that made survival painful and terrifying for anyone left on the battlefield. 4. Capturing rather than killing, fueling the cycle of fear. Aztec warriors were trained not just to kill but to capture, which was a skill that required intense precision and control. Warriors were incentivized by the number of captives they brought back. In fact, a warrior's social rank and privileges depended largely on how many prisoners they captured for sacrifice. This practice of capturing enemies, rather than simply slaying them on the battlefield, meant that defeated foes knew their fate was worse than death. To be taken by an Aztec warrior was to face public humiliation, followed by a journey to Tenochtitlan, where captives would endure a terrifyingly public and ceremonial death atop the temple pyramids. 5. Sacrificial warfare, ritualized death for religious domination. The Aztec Empire's conquests were fueled in large part by their belief in the need to feed the gods with human blood. This led to a form of sacrificial warfare that ensured a constant supply of captives to be offered to deities like Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and sun. Captured warriors, often leaders or high-status individuals, were brought to the towering pyramids of Tenochtitlan, where they would have their hearts cut out while still alive. This ritual was intended to prevent the end of the world, a belief that granted Aztec warriors a religious zeal that made them fight with unparalleled ferocity. 6. Scorched earth policy, destruction to deter resistance. Aztecs didn't just defeat their enemies, they sought to destroy their capacity to resist. When a city resisted Aztec rule, it faced total ruin. Entire villages were burned to the ground, crops were destroyed, and resources were seized. This scorched earth policy left conquered lands desolate, ensuring that the survivors were not only subdued, but also utterly dependent on the Aztecs for survival. Those who opposed the empire knew that resistance came with a cost that extended beyond the battlefield, often leaving them starving, homeless, and vulnerable to further attacks. 7. Blood debt and tribute system, enforcing control through constant threat. Once subdued, conquered territories were not left to govern themselves freely. The Aztecs imposed a tribute system, essentially a blood debt, requiring conquered peoples to send a steady supply of captives, goods, or services to the empire. This tribute wasn't optional. Failing to meet the Aztecs' demands could trigger another brutal attack. The system created a perpetual fear among subject peoples, who knew that any sign of defiance, would bring the Aztec war machine back to their doorsteps. This tactic ensured loyalty and reinforced the terror that allowed the Aztec Empire to maintain control over vast territories. The Aztecs built an empire of awe and horror, ruled not just through military might, but by mastering the art of psychological and ritual warfare. Their fearsome tactics served to remind their enemies that Aztec power was absolute, and that resisting the empire meant facing a future filled with blood, death, and destruction. In the end, their unparalleled approach to warfare made them one of the most feared civilizations of the ancient world.